Welcome to the Return of WADJEDI Serpent Power podcast. Here we explore the science of serpent energy and how it is used in yoga, ritual, and medicine to achieve the highest levels of fitness, emotional and sexual wellness, financial prosperity, healing, and spiritual mastery. I'm your host, Fly Priestess, and I invite you to join me on this captivating journey of self-discovery and empowerment.
Thanks to everybody, and thank you for joining me again for this is episode number 4 of the Wadjet Yoga Physical Health Series. So I just want to take a minute to make sure everybody's got the right connection. If you go to my Facebook page or to the event, it's blogtalkradio.com. And the call-in number is 657-383-0709. And I just wanted to mention also, before I get started with tonight's show, for a few people who have asked me about the Wadjet Yoga book. I know a lot of the people who came in and listened already have purchased the book and have already been connecting with the information there. For those of you who haven't, the book is also available on Amazon. So I'm going to post a link in the group chat room today. And just to let everybody know, chat room, and you can post questions there if you have any questions. I know sometimes people kind of don't really want to call in and actually have a conversation about a question they might have. So definitely feel free to connect, just by typing a question. And I'm here taking a look at these, and I'll be able to answer any questions you have about anything we go through. Or if you want to participate in a discussion, again, feel free to call in. If you would like to have some questions to share, comments. If anybody has read the book and has used any of the information there, that's something that they would like to share, your thoughts and your experiences on using Wadjet Yoga, because too much and too often in our community we use our spirituality and our spiritual systems, African spiritual systems, as just something that we can use to brag about, or something that we can use to one-up other people who are not on the same page. And a lot of people who are talking about African spirituality are not really living it. So this is definitely something that we need to move forward and take this forward. We are in really difficult days right now. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of distractions available in the world right now, and distractions both positive and negative. There's distractions in the form of mindless entertainment, but then there are also really horrible things that are going on in the world, especially going on in our world, and beginning to feel like we're at war here a lot of times. And a lot of people feel that might not be, might have questions about how we can handle that, what is the right way to go about handling that. And it's sometimes can be a bit of a struggle to understand. It's something that we kind of have to not necessarily make peace with in the sense of staying calm and doing nothing, but make peace with in the fact that we have to set our emotions about these kind of things aside and develop a determination. But also we need to develop this confidence, to be ready when the time comes. To give you an example that people might be more familiar with, in ancient times, samurai warriors, for example, were trained with having to prepare for their death. They would have to sit down. They would have to spend hours a day preparing for their death, meditating on what it felt like to die, imagining themselves dying in every possible scenario, so that if the eventuality came that they were going to die, that they were ready. They were ready to face that with calmness, so that at the last moment on the battlefield, they didn't become scared and dishonor them, run away, or do the wrong thing. And right now, we have become such reactionaries. It's just terrible how many things, like literally every single week in the news, every week since I've done a broadcast, and since the week before I started doing the broadcast, every single week we've lost somebody to police fire. And it's bizarre at this point that it's so constant, and it's hitting headlines every day also. and just looking worse and worse and more atrocious each time. And everybody is just, the wave of emotion is just getting higher and higher and higher with each one. And this is exactly what they're looking for. They're exactly looking to push us to the point that we panic and that we're afraid and that we live in fear and that we fear them and think that they have total control over our lives. And as long as we allow our emotions to keep leading the charge to battle, they're going to win, because as long as we use emotionality as our first weapon, as our first foot forward, we will not be able to make solid decisions about how to create a better future for ourselves and our people. A reason that this system of yoga has come to the forefront at this particular time. Each new spiritual system and spiritual development and each new path that rises up is a product of its environment that it was created in. And Wadjet Yoga, even though it's been growing and incubating for years, it actually developed and came out at a time when the war is rising. The energy for war is rising. Things are changing right now. There are different reactions taking place. Something has changed in how we respond to the things that are going on with us. There are a lot more lone wolves rising. There are a lot more people who feel that the right thing to do is to take some sort of action against what's happening to us. There was a point when everybody was just reaching and praying and wondering and asking themselves what was going on and how all these things were happening to us, and still in the phase of questioning. And far more of us who are beyond questioning and asking why is this happening to us, and far more people who are ready to actually do something about it. And so now that we're in the phase of wanting and being ready to do something about it, we actually have to figure out who we are and what our stance is in order to determine what we are going to do. Because all of our paths are not the same. Everybody's not here for the same purpose and the same destiny and the same path. But as a collective, when we understand what it is that we need to do in order to, the one thing that everybody wants is to have free will and control over their own lives. That's the one thing that we all have in common, regardless of how we all think we're supposed to get there. We're constantly bickering over how we get there. But we do all have that same one goal in common, and that's the thing that we need to understand. We have the one goal in common, that we all want to live lives with free will, and choose our own destinies, those ones that were made and created and given for us. And for many, many more of us are coming to understand that by using our own culture as a tool, that we can actually get there, back to that place. So before we respond to the incidents that keep happening to us over and over as a collective, now we're poised. We're at a pivot point right now. We need to stop, breathe, pause, and understand exactly what it is that we are doing, what it is that we are ready to do, what are we prepared to do. And this takes a lot of introspection. We have to look at ourselves and figure out how we came to be the way we are as a collective. How did we get this way? And where do we want to go from here? So those are two important questions that we need to match. Or if I mentioned this at the beginning, I apologize for just interrupting here, but the call-in number, just in case anybody would like to call in, is 657-383-0709. And you can also go and click on the link that's on my Facebook page if you'd like to join the show. Okay, so I'm talking about the yoga here and why Wadjet Yoga, this system in particular, rose up and was created and was developed and arrived at this point in time. System is not just about developing yoga so that we can relax and that we can approach the things that happen to us in our lives and respond to them from a more peaceful place so that we feel good. It's not about allowing us to just feel good as we go through the sameness, because we need to develop the strength at this point to change our realities. Many people are hearing all of these things. This isn't new anymore. This used to be all new age and cutting edge, that we affect our own reality. Again, we've passed that pivot point. We've passed that tipping point where that's something that we're coming to understand very clearly, that we play a role in our destinies and acting out. And as such, now we need to harness our power as people. And so the system that's created, this Wadjet Yoga system, is in order to harness the power to develop the capacity for that self-introspection, to understand who we really are. This is of vital importance. It's of vital importance for us to understand who we are and how we want to respond to the things going on around us. And that's in our daily lives, every day, with what we want to do, why are we here, what purpose do we serve to the people, the families, the community around us, and for the greater good of who we are, what legacy are we going to leave, what mark are we going to leave in the world. Because right now, people are leaving marks on us, leaving impressions on us of the reality that they feel is the correct reality, and they're imposing their version of reality on us. And we are basically at this point just sitting back and accepting it. And that's changing. So this is an important time. We've come here at an important time, and we need to do something with that. So I am going to explain tonight about the different limbs. We have different limbs of yoga. And traditionally, yoga has been divided into 8 sections. And each of these 8 sections is a phase of the development process, which helps the person who is a regular practitioner, because this Wadjet Yoga is not meant just to be lived. It's meant to be lived at whatever capacity the person who is capable of. So if you are at the point where yoga is something you do to get health, something you do to help you stretch, for example, something you do to help you release pain, then it's useful. It's useful and beneficial, and it will help you take care of certain issues that you have. But yoga is much bigger than that. It's also a lifestyle. It's a spiritual system, an entirely complete spiritual system, and you can draw from the water of this endlessly and constantly use it for the purpose of developing self-mastery, developing power, focus, and changing your reality, altering your reality, and having the strength to face the transformations that you have to go through while you're altering your reality. In order to alter our reality as a collective through our personal transformation first, before we can be sure that we can alter our reality as a people, we need not just to believe that we can change our reality, but we need to have the experience of having changed and transformed who we started out as and who we become, and we need to be able to witness that change within ourselves, because by witnessing that change, we don't believe we are capable of change anymore, that we are capable of creation. We know because we are it. We live that truth. So the first limb, and for example, like in the Hindu yoga system, they're called rays or limbs. And in the Wadjet Yoga system, they are referred to as the lotuses. So there are 8 lotuses. And in Khemenu, the lotus is called a Seshen. So the Seshen and the Khemenu is 8. So the Seshen and Khemenu is the 8 lotuses. And the lotuses begin, the outer petals of the lotus begin with removing certain habits from the personality, from the character, from the daily being. And the final lotus, the inner plane, the inner space of the lotus, ends with the release of the ego self and fully embracing the divine connection that allows us to completely connect to our Ka, the deity who rules our head, and to fully embrace the destiny that is set out for us and to fully live into it and to be who it is that we came to be. without question, without hesitation, and regardless of what the end result will be. So the first lotus, the first Seshen, represents the choice not to cause harm to lie to, or to steal from others. It also involves developing control of the sexual appetite so that you can retain the maximum while going through an active choice, an active and conscious choice to not lie to not hurt anyone, to not steal from others, while actively choosing a path which takes us away from these external, from looking outside of ourselves. Because often, to cause harm to somebody, it's some anger, some connection to the outside world. All of these things are basically withdrawing our energy from the outside world. There's no reason to hurt somebody else. And I'm not saying there is no reason. Of course, obviously, we live in reality. There are moments, but we're talking about outside of self-defense and in daily reality. We're talking about not choosing to harm somebody for getting out of balance with our tempers or things like this, where we resort to violence when another possibility was equally, or to lie to others, is often because we fear what they'll think of us if we tell them the truth. So we actively choose in all cases to be truthful, to tell the truth, to give our word, and to stick to our word when we tell someone we're going to do something. The active choice not to steal from others, and that's stealing anything, stealing somebody else's ideas, parroting somebody else's thoughts, and pretending that they're our own. All of these different ways of stealing, not just stealing material objects, but all of the ways that we steal from others, stealing other people's time, using up other people's time to ask them for help when we have no intention of taking their advice, for example. That's stealing other people's time. And also, again, control of the sexual appetite, control of your sexual behavior. All of these things are withdrawing certain senses from the outside world and learning how to contain, to become self-contained. Because in order to really fully understand who you are and to develop the power to stand in your own square, you have to become self-contained. When there is energy flowing in and out, the more energy is flowing in and out, the more difficult it is to tell where your energy ends and where another person or other people's energy begins. And so it's difficult to say, who am I, to answer the question, who am I really, when your energy is in a constant flux and in a constant set of response to other people and to who they are and how they behave and what issues are going on. We have loads of issues going on in our community, and if we allow ourselves to be emotionally affected by them constantly, we will spend all of our days in a constant flux of emotions, up and down, and anger and resentment and pain and bitterness and sadness and anger again and frustration. And with the current events that are going on right now, this wave of energy that everybody is giving themselves over to, and it's to the point where the few people, even the type of comments that I see people making when people choose to stay in their square and not allow these events to affect them emotionally. And I'm not saying in a sense of, I'm speaking in the sense of at the ego level, at the personal level of emotional response. Divine hate is something entirely different. Divine hate does not come from our ego self, from our lower self. That is a sense of understanding fully what is ma'at and what is not, and having the strength and the courage to uphold ma'at under any and all fid or affronted when something happens. So with all these things that are going on in the news, people are riding these waves of emotion, and I've noticed that the few people who remain calm and still look to strategy, what do we do? How do we handle this? How do we strategize? Those who have not given in to emotional excess have been shunned, have been shut down, and are being ostracized by the community because they're not being emotional. And so what this tells me is that, again, people don't have control even over their own emotional senses because they're allowing all of the external circumstances to dictate how they feel at any given moment. And as long as you keep giving away your power, even at the emotional level, you can never be a full master of your own destiny while you continue to give away your power on whatever level that you do. So, again, pulling in all of these energies and drawing into the self, this is the maximum energy formation for real transformation. You have to withdraw into yourself. All beings who go through a growth process do not go through the growth process while they are engaged in constant fluctuations of the energies and people and situations going on around them in all forms, whether it's a baby growing in the womb or a butterfly inside of a cocoon. Everybody withdraws into a space, into a personal space that nobody else can touch, and they do their maximum growing inside that space. So because we live regular human lives, we can't go into a cocoon. We can't hibernate for years and not come out. We can't shut ourselves inside the house and not talk to anybody forever and ever, and days and days and days and weeks and months. We have to keep continuing to interact with the world. So what we need to do is adjust our behavior in order to be able to create that cocoon, that shell around us where we have our space to grow and to self-contain and to understand who we are. So in the first Seshen point at which we withdraw into the cocoon, so during the time, traditionally, like in certain religions, in certain spiritual systems, they would do a lot of spiritual study, read a lot of scriptures, read doctrines, read just religious or spiritual texts in general. And in ancient African tradition, obviously, or many of the indigenous traditions all over the world, don't use scriptures, don't use scrolls, don't use these kind of things, because it was understood that all of these things were written down in your DNA. So before there was ever any written, the writing was for people who came later to study the people who once knew the information as it was being told through their DNA. So once the people lost the capacity, power, they were able to read the writings of people who were able to tap into their own power. But we are coming back into a time where African spirituality is on the rise again, and remembering that we don't need to pick up a book in order to remember who we are. We don't need to parrot what somebody else thought. All the answers that we have for our particular destiny are all written within us. So going within is the only place to find the real answers. You can definitely find some answers when you read books that were written by others. There are general rules of living that apply to almost all of us at some point in our lives or at some point in some part of our journey. So it is useful to read spiritual texts and to read things about how people lived, what they did, excellent advice from ancestor generations, still remembering that our particular path has its own story, and that's a story that is given to us directly. And the only way to hear and know and live that story is to go within. So the first lotus is called Dar-ib. That's the word for it in the Wadjet Yoga system. And Dar-ib is about self-control. It's about developing the capacity of self-control, not allowing things to change who we are, not changing our behavior, our thoughts, and these kind of things based on the information and the circumstances of our environment, staying strong and staying steady within ourselves, because once we arrive at the place where we can stay steady within, the capacity for transformation. So we go within, we take a transformation, and then once the transformation at that point, or up until whatever point our destiny needs it at that time, then once it's ready, then after that, that's when we're able to expand, open up, come out of the cocoon, and to hear and to go forward and to give and share what it is that we've taken on. So that's the first. The second lotus involves changing certain habits. So the whole physical hygiene in our typical Western lives, there are many, many things that were considered a natural part of the hygiene of our ancestors, which parts of ourselves that we are not even aware of at this time. But developing the regular habits of fasting, cleaning up the diet, cleaning out the tongue, the nostrils, and during this time while we're changing and cleansing out the physical form and developing habits that keep us clean on a regular basis. For example, doing certain fasting in tune with the new moon or the full moon, changing the diet so that we eat certain foods at particular times of the day and stop eating at particular times of the day, cleaning out the tongue, the nostrils, cleaning out all the parts of the body where mucus might develop based on different circumstances going on that our bodies respond to. And while we are going through this physical cleansing and changing our physical cleansing habit, this is also a time when we would shift the direction of our ambition from worldly pursuit, which many of us have already gotten onto that level of changing from being very worldly for chasing money for money's sake, working just to earn a living, to earn money, to spend on things that we need to continue living daily lives. Paying attention to things like television and politics and celebrities, these sort of things, these worldly pursuits, all of these sort of the ambition. Once we start to clean ourselves, we also need to clean up our lives of these kind of things that take our attention. They steal our attention. They infiltrate us. So when we watch movies that are full of violence, or especially showing TV shows or movies to children, sometimes I'm appalled at the kind of things that our people will allow young children to watching 5 years old, watching movies with zombies and things like this. I mean, this is just awful. The things we watch also make us filthy. The things we listen to in music also make us filthy. The kind of things that are on the radio today, the kind of things you can find in any magazine, the kind of things you can find on any TV channel at all are designed to continually make us filthy. Because when you get extremely filthy, number one, so much energy is diverted away from your forward progress in life, because your spirit, your aura, your being will constantly try to clean these. So you're using up the capacity of energy that you have. I should say we have an unlimited capacity of energy, but because of how and who we are living, the times we are living in right now, there does seem to be somewhat of a limit on our energy. So to use up that energy for constantly cleaning ourselves from things that are not serving us anyway don't seem to make any sense. So having to watch a horror movie where we watch people get chopped up and scream and all sorts of things, and then for our aura to have to go and clean that out of itself, that's the energy that can have been put somewhere else. And so it's important to remember, clean not only the physical self, but in conjunction with the physical cleansing and developing the habits of physical cleansing, to also develop habits. And also once these cleansing habits begin, a lot of times people will find that they just can no longer tolerate. There was a time when I was able to watch horror movies and to watch certain kinds of things, and some of those things really, really make me physically ill. I can't watch people being chopped up. I really avoid horror movies and these kinds of things. I physically can't watch them anymore because they are so toxic. And I never tried to stop, or I never even thought about it. This was like a natural side effect of just going through the process of cleansing and in tune with the moon, in tune with the cycles of nature. And these kind of things happen. And once these things happen, you do find that you have more energy. A lot of times, some of the energy that we are wasting on these things are actually taking away some of our life force. Sometimes the energy of having to constantly replicate cells and DNA and make new cells and continue to recreate our physical forms, when this energy is diverted away to constantly clean ourselves, people will age more quickly. When people have to process painful experiences in life, these kind of things can age people more quickly. These kind of things have to be constantly cleaned out of the being. So developing the habit of cleansing and making cleansing a conscious process, and not just drinking green juice on the way to work. That's not good enough in the realm of cleansing. Cleansing has to be something that you recognize is something that affects your entire being. And so when you devote yourself to a cleansing program and to a cleansing process, remember to that your entire being is being affected by what you do. So third lotus. Now, all of these lotuses, again, as I was explaining, all of these lotuses, these are tears, not tears crying, T-I-E-R-S, tears of the journey forward. So one would begin by closing up. Then the next step would go into cleansing. So all of these are steps. They're parts of the process towards ultimate spiritual mastery. The third lotus represents the actual physical practice of the yoga postures. So this is a yoga that is incredibly popular here in the West. A lot of people don't even know, because to practice physical hygiene and cleansing and phases of the moon and things like this is actually one type of yoga itself. So majja, self-cultivation, is a form of yoga. It is actually a form of yoga unto itself. Yoga is about developing that union with the divine, that divine alignment. Everything that is drawing a person back toward their divine alignment is yoga, all of it. So these are just different methods of drawing back to the divine alignment. And even though these are steps that are best done in a particular order, when each of these steps is carried out, no matter which one you use, they will all start to take you towards the others. So you may find that reading religious texts and going within brings you to the place where all of the other aspects of yoga will open up to you, where you want to take on the physical practice, where you want to start to do breathing or chanting, where you want to become more clean and give up TV or stop reading magazines. Each ray, each lotus will, when practiced with diligence and with devotion, will start to open up all of the other lotus systems for you. So again, the third lotus represents the physical practice, and this one is the aspect of yoga that's popular here in the West. A lot of people, so when they think of yoga, they literally just think yoga means stretching their body and bending it into all sorts of pretzel shapes. That's one tiny slice of what yoga is, and it's not about bending and stretching. It's about opening the body, opening the channels of the body, and it's actually about having a conversation with the body. Real yoga, when stretching, is not just so that your physical form looks a certain way, or so that it meets a certain standard of beauty, or even so that it increases health. It's not only for that. The deepest purpose of the physical form of yoga, about stretching, about bending, moving, twisting the body, is that your body becomes a conversation. So when you feel tension or tightness in a certain part of your body, when you understand what that part of your body is doing for you, for example, your legs walk, they move you forward through life. If you have tension in your hamstrings or pain in your knees, what is that saying about your walk forward in life? What is your body saying to you? And through the practice of yoga, as you overcome some of these, because sometimes people will start out with pain or tension and then it will release itself, or they will not feel anything, and then through the practice of the yoga will start to feel pain somewhere that either felt numb or dead, or where it just didn't feel any pain before, and they'll start to notice something open up and change, and the body is having a constant conversation with you as you go through the process of doing physical yoga. And the conversation that your body has with you, your body is responding to all of life. Your body is carrying the messages of everything you have been and everything you have done. So when you have this conversation with your body, it's almost like sitting in a room and talking to an elder and asking, what was life like back in the days? What happened back then? What were things like? Your body is carrying all of this conversation for your personal story. So your body is your own elder that you move around with, that tell you, this is how you felt. This is how you responded. This is what you really think of that. Let's suppose you think about work, some job that you hate. As soon as you think about your job, your stomach becomes tight, or your shoulders get tense, your neck tenses up, and your face gets tight. Your body is telling you what you think of your job. in that circumstance. So we really, really, really need to listen to the messages, the wisdom that our body is giving us, because when we start to listen to what it's saying to us, we actually can start to make better choices and respond to our circumstances around us. So by understanding our bodies, we truly come to understand ourselves in a much better way. And so the physical form of yoga, again, is not just about stretching or being more bendy than the person in the classroom next to you or something like that. It's really, really about a deep conversation that you have. And you can refer, this is your elder that you move around with, you can refer to this and have a conversation with your body at any time and ask your body that all the time that you didn't do exercise and that you should have, what messages got stored up inside your body every time that you thought you should go jogging but you didn't go, or every time you overate, or every time you didn't get sleep, or all of those conversations are stored up. So have a conversation with your body. This is an important practice of and a real tool to understand who you are and what is your story. And understanding the story that you came from, of course, always helps us to understand where we're going, what it is that we are, where are we supposed to move to next from what we know with what we know. And so that lotus, the third lotus of Wadjet Yoga system, is called Kesi. And Kesi is the physical postures. So we have the Daughter Ib, which is the first lotus, the first Seshen, which is self-control. We have the Maja, which is self-cultivation, and the Kesi, which are the physical postures. The fourth lotus has to do with the development and control of the breath. And even though the development and use of the breath is one of the most powerful and important tools that we can have, and the one thing that will cut off our life instantly if we don't have breath, that's in such a short time. But there is a certain level of development. Before developing breath control, it is recommended to go through a certain understanding of a certain cleansing, a certain connection with the self and with the path that you choose to be on and want to be on before you even sit down and begin breath work. But again, all of the paths, all of the lotuses, all of the paths lead to one. All of them will take you from whichever one you begin with, will open up and expand all the other paths for you and take you inward to the center of the lotus. So in developing breath control changes the actual physiology. How you breathe can actually change your physical structure. It has been proven now, science through even Western science, which is so excellent at breaking down and looking at tiny components, even with their science, has been able to see that the breathing, the way you breathe, can actually alter what's going on in your DNA. So the way you breathe consistently over a long period of time will begin to send messages to your DNA, and your DNA will adjust and alter based on the messages that it's getting from the way you breathe. Whenever we breathe, millions of processes are going on at the same time inside of us. So there are nerve reactions that are based on the way we breathe. There are hormonal secretions going on based on the way we breathe. There are nerve responses, hormonal secretions, which affect particular organs. Then in turn, the particular organs will give a message to the other organs and organ systems around it. So a whole entire processes all adjust and alter and change depending on the way we breathe. And so with this understanding, because the ancients understood this, so many, many, many techniques for breathing have been developed in order to create various effects in the physical body. And also not just the physical body, but also to alter the aura, alter the emotional field, the intellectual field, because all of these are affected. Of course, they're all intertwined. So just to give some examples, alternate nostril breathing, which means like breathing first out of, say, the left nostril, and then with the right nostril held closed, and then breathing out of the right nostril with the left nostril held closed. That's alternate nostril breathing. or single nostril breathing, just continuing to hold one nostril down while breathing the opposite one steadily for a certain amount of time and with a certain pattern. There's diaphragm breathing, which is breathing deep down all the way down into the bottom of the lungs, taking full deep breaths. The fuller and deeper the breath, the more relaxed the body is, and the more the body uses the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. Both of these are calmed and adjusted and shifted by breathing all the way down into the bottom of our lungs. And when we are in a stress pattern, stress, fight, or flight response, shallow, because there are certain things there are many systems, there are many messages being given at each level of where the lungs are. The lungs are in 3 tiers, 3 layers, and the top of the lungs and the breathing tubes going down into the lungs and the top of the lungs is one layer. The center of the lungs is one layer, and then the bottom of the lungs are another layer. And each of these layers give off different messages. So when only the top of the lungs and the tubes are stimulated all the time, these give a certain message. They give a breathe all the way down into the diaphragm. It gives the message that we are safe, that we are relaxed, that we are powerful, that we are free. So we need to constantly remind our bodies by breathing correctly that we are safe, we are powerful, we are free, and remind our bodies so that our physical form adjusts to this reality, regardless of the reality going on or that we think is going on around us through our external perception. Regardless of any of those realities, we need to continue to tell our body, because our body will respond to whatever story that we are giving it. So when we tell our body that we are safe and powerful and free, we have a much stronger foundation on which to unfold our destiny, a much stronger foundation on which to respond to the things going on in our environment than we do when our bodies are in a state of fear, a state of panic. We can't work well from that position. There are too many points in the body that don't have all the resources that they need, because when we're in fight or flight, when we are in stress response, the body cuts off any extra resources and just focuses on the bare essentials of staying alive. We have to go beyond that. We have to stop surviving. We have to stop living in the struggle. We're not here to struggle. We're here to thrive and to live. So we need to breathe as though we are here to live. So we have the alternate nostril breathing, single nostril breathing through the one nostril or the other, the diaphragm breathing, which is deep down into the lungs. Then also breath retention, holding the breath is a specific type of breathing, or holding the breath in a pattern, holding it in or holding it out for periods of time. And then there's also a cooling breath, which is breathing in through the mouth with the tongue held like in an O shape in a circle. There's the breath of fire, or a bellows, or the Wadjet breath, which is called in the Wadjet system, which is breathing really powerfully and rapidly from the belly and pumping the navel in and out towards the spine and doing really strong, powerful breaths. And this actually raises the body temperature and purifies. It brings loads of oxygen into the body, into the blood, into the brain, and releases loads of carbon dioxide from the body. And it helps to release all the acids. So, for example, after a workout, when different acids have been released from the muscles and are floating around in the bloodstream and needing to be cleansed out by the kidneys, this process is accelerated to a huge degree by doing the breath of fire. So loads of toxins that are in the blood are released. We don't use our lungs for the full capacity of the cleansing tool that they are, because we don't breathe properly. But the breath of fire is a powerful, powerful cleansing breath. It actually assists our kidneys. It assists our lungs, our liver, our intestines actually excreting things that otherwise, if we don't excrete them through our lungs, that we have to process them through other means in our body. And because we weigh so heavily on those other means, mostly from eating toxic food and things like this, our entire digestive system is already struggling and overworked. So to learn how to breathe properly and just to do something like a breath of fire every day on a daily basis cleanses the body and being so much that it really brings life to all of the other organs. The breath of fire is one. The humming breath is another one. The humming breath is just doing a breath and there are different patterns of breathing, but where just a humming sound is made, and the humming sound actually produces a vibration inside the skull, so it affects the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, all of the master glands that are inside of the brain are all affected, as well as the brainstem are all affected by the humming breath. And when the vibration of the hum alters quickly, it purifies and it alters the DNA and it alters the physical structure of the different organs of the different hormones of the different glands that are inside the brain. Chanting is also covered under breath, and chanting has been proven for thousands and thousands of years to have extremely powerful transformative effects as well. So the fourth lotus of Wadjet Yoga is the Khemenu. Khemenu is breath control. That's what that means. The fifth lotus is the Jedi, or the Jedi, and this means to be a pillar, translated directly. And the fifth lotus comes to the conscious removal of the senses from the external reality. So in the first lotus, what we're doing is choosing to withdraw our behaviors from the external reality around us, our behaviors, our emotional behavioral responses from the reality around us. The fifth lotus is the conscious removal of the senses. So this is when we choose to fast for example, if we choose not to speak, when we choose a speech fast, when we decide to stop talking, when we choose a silent fast, when we choose to stop listening to things, no music, no sound, no senses, nothing coming in, when we choose to sit in darkness for a period of time or to cover our eyes, when we choose to eat food that's bland and plain so that the excitement of trying new delicious foods can't lure us. It's about removing physical sensory temptation from us and learning how to, because we're so overwhelmed, especially, again, in Western society, we are constantly bombarded with choices everywhere that fly by us all day long. We have instant access to 1,000 opinions, instant access to all day long 1,000 colors with advertising everywhere. Where a lot of us live in cities where we're constantly meeting new people, seeing new faces. So there's constantly new information, and we are living in astounding amount of sensory overload, and we're not even aware of how overloaded our senses are until either we get injured in some way and have to deal with not hearing, with not seeing, with having something happen with our taste buds, or when we actually choose to go away somewhere, like, for example, to go away and spend a weekend camping and being out in nature. So it will almost drive them crazy if you take somebody out of the city where the sound of sirens and cars honking and people shouting and just all sorts of noise, cars and the motors running. And when you take them away from all these sounds that they hear all the time, that they have to wake up to, go to sleep to every single day, when you take away these sounds from them and then just put them out in nature where there's nothing overnight but the sound of, say, crickets or something, they can't even sleep because they're so used to sensory overload that their brain, their mind has to fill in something into that space just to make them feel normal. And this sensory overload is another channel of energy waste. We waste energy processing sensory information. So just like we fast from food, just like it's useful for the digestive system to remove everything from the diet except, for example, say water, and allow the digestive system time to rest, time to heal, time to repair itself. When we remove other external sensory information, we give that system, the system itself, the organ itself, and the connection, the nerve connection to the brain that it runs to, time to heal, time to renew itself. When we stop looking at things all the time, stare and just look at one thing or keep our eyes closed for a time, we give our the nerves, the optical nerves, a chance to rest, a chance to repair themselves. When we stop talking, we give our vocal cords, we give our lungs, we give all of these all of the parts of the body that are involved in speech. We give them all a chance to rest. We give ourselves a chance that when there's not so much. A lot of times people just chit-chat just to say nothing, just because they feel so nervous. A lot of people feel like you're supposed to talk all the time, and they wonder, and they've never experienced the emptiness of silence, and they have to, a lot of people are fear that silence because they have to come to know their own selves in that silence. They have to hear what the inner voice is saying. A lot of times we will go through incredible odds, incredible lengths just to avoid hearing what our real self is saying in the silence, underneath all that sound, underneath all that food. What is our body saying to us? What are our thoughts saying to us behind all that food? Because what happens when we take away food? Anybody here who has fasted, absolutely, myself included, anybody who has fasted knows what it feels like when you go through those days when you stop eating and you say, oh, well, come on, maybe just today I'll have something. You know what, okay, I was going to fast for 3 days, but maybe one day is good. And there's just a mental chatter that goes on, and that's the chatter we don't want to face. We don't want to face having to say no to ourselves. We never want to do that because we're so used to being, here you go, here you go, here you go, constantly, all day long, from the moment we wake up. And even some of us have to wake up to these horrible alarm clocks telling us what to do instantly, all the way till the last night, until the last moment when we go to sleep. And so we are winding down on time here. So I did just want to let anybody know, anybody who is listening, who wants to continue listening to the show, because I'm going to finish completely explaining the other lotuses. If anybody would like to stay with the program, then I invite you just to call in. The number again is 657-383-0709. And we have about 6 minutes left of the show online. And after that, then the online is going to cut off, but everybody who has called in will still be able to hear the rest of the show. We were not going to run too far over the time, but just I invite everybody to definitely call in if you want to catch the rest of it. Okay, and so removing the senses and taking note of our physical reactions to our emotional sensations, developing the capacity to sense imbalances in our physiology, and we learn how to connect with our true selves, with our real selves, with who we are in the silence, who we are with nothing. When we take away all of those things of our external reality and all of those responses to external reality, in that silence, that's when we know who we are. And again, pointing back to the issues that have been going on over this past week and over the past few weeks, constantly in the news, we need at each moment now. There's a war brewing, and at no other time, right now, we need to know who we are so that we can become prepared for what we will do if eventualities happen to us. A lot of times, a lot of people haven't been through too many things. A lot of people have been living regular, basic, safe lives, or even lives that have difficulty in them, but living the sameness, a life that they understand. Even if it's difficult, they've come to understand the difficulty and accept it and live with it on a continual basis, and don't really know who they would be if they begin to be another way. If your environment were to change tomorrow and you were thrown into an incredible great deal of success, whatever success looks like to you, would you be able to handle it? Would you be prepared? Do you know yourself well enough to know who you would be? And if the opposite happened, if something really horrible happened around you, who would you be? How would you respond to the incredible, horrible story happening to you? How would you respond? What would you do in the moment? How would you get through it? And a lot of times, because we haven't had to live in any sort of extremes, we don't really know who we would be. And because we are constantly focused on our external, constantly focused on work and groceries and friends and other people's opinions and what is the community saying and all these other factors, all of these factors are important because they're our life, we're living it, but we need to really understand who we are. That's our fundamental. We can't go forward truly until we know that. We can make many, many false starts because we can step off a foundation of who we think we are and step and go in the entirely wrong direction because we weren't really that. And we have to backtrack all the way back until we rediscover ourselves, our real true selves, and then walk forward from there. And sometimes that journey it's a process for everyone, of course, but it can take over and over. You're going to have to do it for so long. But yoga allows us to consciously and actively choose to withdraw and to look at ourselves rather than having life experiences have to push us unexpectedly into places where we exist a certain way, where we have to discover ourselves. We can choose to make the process and the path of self-discovery. And when we choose our path, we get to create it. We aid in the creation of that path and that process, which makes it, for one thing, much easier. But then also it makes us have the sort of life that is our own. We become the creators of our reality through that way, called men-ib. And this is about focusing the intent. It's about stilling the heart. Ib, or eb, is heart. Men-ib is about having a solid foundation of the heart. The sixth lotus helps us to develop the ability to focus. So we have to develop first our attention, and then we have to develop our intention, and then we develop the will. So we have to first go through all of these tools and paths and processes where we focus our attention, where we learn how to concentrate. Exactly from what I was saying before about what we see through these responses when I look on, say, for example, on Facebook on my timeline, and I see the responses of people to the issues that have been coming up in the news over these past few weeks. And there's just constant wave of emotional reaction after wave of emotional reaction. And then on top of everybody's emotional reaction, then on top of that, then there's the constant bickering and arguments when other people's emotional reactions and responses don't match our emotional reactions and responses. Then there's fighting, so that people are fighting for other people to believe, to feel the same way they feel, because only what they feel and think is right. So therefore, their way of thinking and feeling, and if they don't, then they need to argue with each other until the other people change their minds. But what's ridiculous is that everyone is doing this and nobody is getting anywhere. So this utter, total waste of time is one of the hugest detriments in our community, and we absolutely need to learn to develop focus. We will not be able to make a plan to go forward and create anything solid ever until we learn how to focus. Anybody who is familiar in any way with doing magic knows that the very first thing before you're going to do a magical spell is about developing focus. You have to develop focus first. If you're in the middle of a magical spell and your thoughts or your mind wanders or wavers off of what it is that you are focusing this intent on, totally mess up your ritual by doing that. And a ritual is just a distilled, concentrated essence of the same thing that we are doing in our everyday reality all the time. The same things that we say to ourselves over and over and over. Oh, I like this. I like this. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. And the same things that we keep telling ourselves over and over and over, playing out these stories in our lives and in our heads over and over. Whatever we give our focus to is what is. So we have to learn how to focus on the right things and then to hold that focus. And once we've learned how to hold the focus, we develop intention. Once we know that we can affect our reality by holding our focus, we develop intention. We can intentionally choose to alter our reality into whatever direction we want it to go. And once we do that, then we become creator. We become okay. It looks like somebody has a question there. And I'm not sure if I can access your question now. I see the phone number ends in 2081. And if your phone number ends with 2081, if you would please for me just to have in the chat room, and I could answer that for you from there. All right. And thank you. I do appreciate any questions or any comments anybody would like to make. Okay. And so back to the sixth lotus, the spiritual cultivation cannot be completed without developing the faculties of your mind. It cannot be completed. To develop the will, which is your creative capacity here in this reality, which is supposed to be aligned with divine will, your will, you need to develop all of the capacities of the mind. And the mind is the mind-heart complex. A lot of people are still under the mistaken notion that the mind is located in the brain. The mind is not located in the brain. The mind is anywhere in the physical form. The mind is located in the heart, and this has actually been proven. So I'm not going to take the time for today's show to go into that. That's something that I definitely suggest researching and looking into. But ancient research from all over the world, as well as modern research, shows that the heart is actually the real seat of the mind. And the brain is a processor. That's a processor tool, and that's something else. But the mind, the origin, the point of origin of spirit when it becomes thought originates in the heart. So for the mind's faculties, we have to develop memory, proper memory. We have to focus. We have to develop our perception, develop our imagination, develop our tools of reasoning and of intuition. And once all of these are developed, this is how we develop the will. We need all of these tools in order to develop will and to be able to use our will as a tool of divine alignment, of a divine energy moving in and through us into this realm. The seventh lotus is called Enkai, and this one is mastering meditation, the capacity to meditate. And this is about developing the capacity of deep meditation. There are many different forms of meditation. So you can meditate. Some people feel that they go through meditation while they're washing dishes, for example, or while they're playing a sport, where their mind, their conscious mind, which is always thinking and organizing and planning, shuts off, and where their real and natural self, without any restraints or barriers on it, comes flowing out of them. And this is one aspect of meditation. So this seventh lotus, Enkai, develops specifically deep meditation. So this is about, in this kind of meditation, the body would have to be in a level of stillness, because the meditation would be so deep that the physical form will not be used. Pure your mind. So while we're awake, or in any level of awaking state, our mind is always judging everything. It's always categorizing everything. Every bit of information that we said, just like we're coming into there. And part of the reason why sensory overload is so difficult and so energy consuming is because every single bit of information that comes into us has to be judged. It has to be categorized. What doesn't fit into our current mental programming needs to be rejected. What is in alignment with our current mental programming needs to be absorbed, and then a place needs to be found for it so that it can slot itself into our understanding. And this reality that we construct is made out of all of this process going on constantly, whether we're actively thinking about it or not. So in the meditative state, especially when we go into very, very, very deep meditation, is removed. And in the process, without this process in the way, this constant filter, can you imagine a juicer where you're dumping fruits and vegetables down into the juicer, and the juicer is spinning and grinding. It's grinding up all of the pieces of fruits and vegetables that you're throwing into it, and grinding it up into little parts, and throwing some in liquid form down into the glass, and throwing some pulp down into the back of the juicer. And our mind is constantly going through this process, constantly spinning and spinning and throwing away that and putting that over there and moving that and grinding that up and checking that. And once this stops, we're not using that energy in order to do that. So we are in a capacity for total and utter freedom, total receptivity, and total creativity the lower mind needs to use. So with that's an important process. Without that function, we couldn't function in three-dimensional reality, without the capacity to judge and categorize and make an organized circle out of everything, an organized sphere that we live inside of that decides our reality for us. We have to have that. That's a capacity we've been given. But we also need to be able to put that capacity down and put it aside, and to remove these constraints from off of us and allow total flowing energy from the universe to pour through us. And as that energy pours through us, our highest maximum level and we are able to fully contact our real selves, fully experience divine alignment, and to fully come to understand and know who we are. Until we arrive in that space and feel that place, we think we know who we are, or we know aspects of ourselves, but we don't know who we fully are until we go all the way under the wave of the mind and go all the way down to the bottom, to the dark bottom of the sea where the water doesn't even move, and to go down underneath that space. Under there is where the truth lies. Under there is where we understand who we really are. And once we get to that, there is a different beingness that we move with. There's just a different beingness. We are someone else after that experience, after we reach the experience of that deep state of meditation, that very, very deep state. And once we've arrived through all of these different stages, the final stage, the final Seshen of the Seshen Khemenu is called Intef. And Intef means the release. And once in our ability to meditate, the eighth lotus, the Seshen Khemenu, it takes the person who is using yoga as a regular spiritual practice, it takes them into a state of oneness with the source. So at this point, you are fully connected to your ka. And not only are you fully connected to your ka, but you are in full movement of divine alignment. You understand who you are, you understand your purpose here, and you understand how to go about living your purpose in every way. Many years of dedicated movement, of dedicated energy and effort, and the use of spiritual practice. And again, this is the whole point of spiritual practice. The purpose of spiritual practice is to give you the opportunity to experience life and growth and transformation without having life happen to you. It gives you the opportunity to go step forward and to go find it, to step forward and to find your place, to step forward and develop your mastery. And once you are able to step forward, when you step forward to go get it side, how the story runs, when you decide to shift or alter or change, then you get to decide. Otherwise, life is going to make you grow anyway. We are all here in the cycle of incarnation and going back into our ancestral realm and helping from there and then coming back here and existing here in order to continually grow and to continually connect with the source of all that is, of everything. So once we arrive at that place where we fully understand our true selves, our true nature, at that point we can fully go into the center of the lotus and be the full connected being that we are. And the point at which we reach that is when we become, there's a huge, long road, not based on length of time, but based on effort. There's a huge, long road between coming to the point where we are calling ourselves gods, but subject to the will of people who want to stomp us out, and between the point of actually becoming and embodying a divine vessel who exists here, who understands their full purpose, who moves in full mastery of their behavior, of their emotions, of their path, of their patterns, with a true understanding of self. Reading some books doesn't make you a god. And just existing here, showing up, incarnating, earn that. You have to earn the status of being a divine vessel through your effort. It's a real disservice to ourselves to call ourselves gods as if this is something that is standard, because we need to put in the mastery. It's number one, it just shows a lack of understanding of what the God path and God purpose actually is. Because if you think just because you exist that you are a divine vessel, that is not the case. Because a divine vessel is somebody who is here to embody ma'at, somebody who is here to exist and move and be in divine flow, in total alignment with all of the ancestral cycle, with all of the beings and light beings and all of the divine principles that you come from. Just because you come from something does not mean that you continue to be it just because you are here. Not everybody here has developed the capacity to be a divine vessel. And if you have not developed that capacity, do not refer to yourself as a god. That is for a reserved few who have mastered their reality here. And so we need to give that honor to the creative forces that brought us here, give that honor to the ancestors who work tirelessly on the other side to try to help us to live in Ma'at and for our communities to live in Ma'at. But if you do not have the capacity to alter the reality of people around you for the better on some level, then sure your ego, take a step back and realize that you have a path to work on. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, and it doesn't mean that we need to cut each other down or anything like that, because we have to just recognize that we need to be on the path. Being on the path is what makes us, that is what separates the difference between whether we are or not. We need to be on the path. So we're too busy here pointing at everybody who's farther down the path and who's the farthest and who's better and who knows more, who's more godly than the other. But these kind of people who are saying these kind of things are the ones who are the least godly. If you need to tell somebody else that you're right and they're wrong, that you know the way and that they don't, without recognizing all of the whole spectrum that's here in existence for us to come through. If you think that you can dictate somebody else's divine destiny through your lens and your filter, you're not there yet. So all of these tools, and yoga is a spiritual system that has proven itself over thousands and thousands and thousands of years to have the same results every time. When something consistently produces the same results over and over and over, when it is used as directed, this is science. So we have many spiritual systems in the world, and yoga is a spiritual science. If you carry out the work exactly as it is told and given, then you will achieve those results. And this is the essence, the total bottom line and essence of what Wadjet Yoga is created for. So that is the 8 limbs. So once again, I'll just run down the names for you. The first lotus is called Dar-ib, and that is self-control. The second lotus is Maja, and that's self-cultivation. The third lotus is Kesi, and that's the physical posture. The fourth lotus is the Khunim, that's breath control. And then we have the Jedi, which is to be a pillar. The Men-ib, to focus the intent, patient, and Intef, which is the release. And these are the 8 limbs of Wadjet Yoga. So I thank you. The time has run way over, so I really appreciate all of you for listening, for tuning in, and for connecting with me on this. And please feel free to inbox me with any kind of questions, to give me a call, and to connect with, in the group, in the Wadjet Yoga group. If you are new to this discussion or new on Facebook, you can find us, Wadjet Yoga, and that's the name of the group. Just reach out and I can connect you to the group, and we discuss health, and we will be discussing more and more. We're in really, really vital times right now where we need to understand ourselves and do more, because we are in the middle of and we need to win. There is no other option, because we are the original indigenous beings here. And without us here, the divine balance of this entire planet would be altered forever. We cannot allow that to happen. We owe it to our creators who exist in and through us, those of us who put the effort to be those divine vessels. And we owe it to everything in existence that formed all of the matrix of events necessary to make us be here at this time in this space, to our reality, to win. And so we need to put forth the necessary tools to make that happen. So thank you again, everybody. And once again, if anybody was not in the chat room, you can find my book, Wadjet Yoga. It's available on Amazon. The title of the book is Wadjet Yoga, Understanding Serpent Power. So definitely feel free to read that. That is the first book in my series of yoga books. And we will continually open up from there. My second book, Emotional Mastery, is due out very shortly. It's getting published, and we will be able to go forward from there and start talking about the emotional conversations that we need to have as a community in order to help us rise. Thank you again for listening in, everybody. I appreciate you. Have a good night.